Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to TADHack Global 2017, live from QUT, hosted by QUT Foundry, and also sponsored this morning by muru-D. I've got a couple of great guys from SiteSee HQ, Lucio.
Hi, Jason.
And Lachlan.
Thanks, Jason.
Both co-founders of SiteSee HQ. Welcome this morning and joining us here on the couch.
Thank you. Cheers.
So just to kick stuff off, let's let everyone know in terms of what SiteSee is all about and where did the idea come from?
Yeah, sure. So SiteSee specializes in the digitization and the analysis of infrastructure. So our journey began about a year ago now when we went full time. We got accepted into the muru-D Accelerator program. And the problem really stemmed from one of our other co-founders, David, who's since not with the business, but he worked within the telco space, and his role as an RF or network designer was to basically decide where he's going to put infrastructure, mobile towers, antennas, so that everyone's got bars on their phones.
Yep.
And part of that process requires that you're maintaining those safety standards with the electromagnetic energy that's emitted from these antennas. So there was a lot of bottlenecks that were in place by doing that. Especially with densification of the network, moving more antennas into rooftops, into built-up environments. You'd have to send teams of engineers and surveyors out there, and then that whole that process was quite slow in getting information back. So the problem we were trying to solve was to use existing UAV technology and 3D software to be able to reconstruct the tower and its environment and quickly iterate and do these EME simulations within a real-world environment, so that teams of engineers didn't have to physically go out to site. And with you've got thousands of these mobile towers and assets across the country and around the world. So we really wanted to address that problem. But since then, it's obviously grown beyond just that initial value proposition.
So in Australia, I wouldn't say it's unique, but it's actually a great testing ground in terms of the infrastructure, the tyranny of distance. Like there's 200,000 kilometres up to the north of Queensland from here.
Yeah.
So in terms of the validating the idea and testing with the industry, how has that been for you?
Yeah. So do you want to talk about some of the first sites that you and Dave did to validate the initial?
Yeah, so the major proposition what we're trying to solve is that we don't want men or people to go out climb these towers, and the tyranny and distance is a big factor. So we wanted to make it safer so less people have to climb the towers. So we went out and did a few towers and just tried to initially capture what we thought was just the RF or the EME of the antenna. And we started with that, and then we started thinking maybe we could expand it a bit further. So we started doing a lot of object recognition over the entire tower. So we started looking, detecting different makes and models of antennas, their exact position in 3D space, and all this started to build up what we started calling an as-built report of this structure. So it really now started to become a compelling driver to not send people out the site. They could do a lot of desktop review work.
Yep.
And that's where we are today. That's sort of the product we got. So,
yeah, and just adding on to that, the value proposition, the validation that we got through the muru-D program and being able to have those very close conversations with Telstra was super valuable in being able to understand the other problems that we hadn't quite thought of initially. And also going over to conferences in Singapore, meeting with global tower owners, infrastructure tower owners. And then as part of the muru-D trip, we also went over to San Francisco and spoke with AT&T and Verizon, which was excellent.
So in terms of those overseas trips, then was that on your own bat? Was there involvement by community? Then what was your process of going global?
Our route to market for going global? So our strategy as a software company has always been to be scalable and to be addressing a global problem. For that reason, we didn't want to be operational in terms of flying drones. We don't fly drones. We partner with UAV operators both here in Australia and around the world who can send us information. So that was our first route to market. Our overseas trips, so the one to Singapore to attend what's called the Tower Exchange conference, that was off our own bat, and we used money from the muru-D program to go over there. Super valuable, some fantastic connections there, all C-level executives that own, a company in India, Indus Towers, has 120,000 mobile towers. So that's the scale of ones that we're dealing with. And then you had the muru-D trip, which was obviously planned and by muru-D and the mentors there, and we went with the other teams. That was, we funded our own way there, but again, super valuable to see that larger vision that that startups have in the States, and just a completely different scale.
And one of the things I talk about that because there's a lot of these trade missions and startup catalysts and these kind of events where we can take not just to learn from other places, but also embed ourselves and almost export the really good ideas that we have and make that available to the whole world. So in terms of community support, then just like the TADHack, this is all volunteers. The whole global organization that runs this hackathon is all based upon volunteers. So what have you seen in terms of your local aspects and what you've seen elsewhere in terms of how important that community is for startups?
You can field that one.
Yeah, well, we really believe at SiteSee, that when we got into the RCL Accelerator that was sponsored by muru-D, that we got plugged into a completely new network, a whole ecosystem for startups, which we weren't fully aware existed in Brisbane. And when we got plugged into it, it went way beyond Brisbane, went nationally and sometimes even internationally. So definitely SiteSee starts to, wants to give back a lot. So we've got an initiative in the RCL Labs. Mm-hmm. We have a tech box every Wednesday where we get the whole community together to share wins, share problems. And we have a topic that we talk about that we get an expert in. And so many experts are happy to just stop past and give back to the community. And we get discussions like right there and then. For 1 hour, we have VCs just sitting right across the table from you, just telling you as it is, and it's fantastic. So the community, the RCL community and the wider ecosystem all come together in a very simple little round table, what we call lunchbox. And it's been fantastic, and I initiated it, and that's all I really try to do. I don't try to do anything more.
Yep.
And that's SiteSee's contribution. We just want to keep it moving.
Because I think as a community, and one of the things I say personally, not just at home, but as part of my work, it does take a village type mentality. So, and in that space, it is not just, okay, what can I do for my family? Because the village is the family. So I love hearing that you've got this on, and I'll just say it now that if there's anything that I can do to contribute as part of the tech box, I'm happy to do that. Whenever, bring other people in. If there's anyone that comes from OS that be of interest and that kind of thing, then I'm happy to plug them into that as well.
I'll take you up on that, Jason.
We'll book you in.
Well, book me in, and then we'll go from there. So the other things I'll sort of talk about is you firstly went through the muru-D Accelerator there. Now you've come back through another one that's based up here that's partnering as well at Riverside Labs. Let's talk about that. What's your journey from this point on?
So we're currently in an accelerator called the Unearthed Accelerator, which has is backed by Origin Energy, and it's got a focus within the resource sector. So initially, when we were very heavily focused on the telco space, and that's still a large strength of ours, we started fielding inbound inquiries from businesses within the resource sector saying, hey, we love what you're doing with your tech. Can it apply here? And we go, okay, well, yeah, okay. We're not familiar with that sector, but yes, we know our technology, and let's apply it in a pilot program for you. So we were accepted into the resource accelerator, the Unearthed Accelerator, which we're currently in, and it's allowed us to take a step back and focus on our value proposition as to our core offering and the other verticals that can be applied in. So that's everything from telcos to we're chasing down opportunities in oil and gas. I think we're going out to a mine site on the 20 later this month.
Yep.
Looking at urban utilities, other structures that also require the level of inspection and analysis that we can deliver on our service offering.
I do a fair bit of work in electrical utilities up here in Queensland. So we've got with Energy Queensland and the whole Energex and Ergon type scenario. So I'm familiar. We've always talked about conditional monitoring and conditional maintenance and optimizing the whole asset management style approach. So things as far as actually getting out to remote, especially with Ergon. Right?
Yeah.
So getting out to remote areas where people still need lines and poles and wires is very much very similar to the kind of infrastructure. And if you apply that to PowerCore, PowerLink, that do all the distribution side between generators and the networks, then they've got a very similar problem space as well.
Yeah.
Well, you've identified exactly the vertical we are attempting to get into right now. So
Okay.
We've identified a huge similarity between large static structures. They look very similar to telco structures, and they have similar problems. They're remote, they're dangerous, you don't want people near them. And they've got different things bolted to them. So for our tech, it looks like the same thing to us. So you've identified something that's exactly. Well, I did not know you were in that industry, so we'll chat after. But yeah, that's where we're.
Well, that's number 2, right?
Yeah. There you go. And also, I guess a lot of those structures, you've got telcos co-locating on the top of them, right?
Yep.
So we've got off-the-shelf tech that can use the object recognition to identify what's on the towers for them, as well as doing the full suite of inspection services. So you don't have to send guys up there, or you don't have to inspect it with helicopters and other dangerous methods.
Yeah, those thousands of volts up there, they're not safe.
Yeah, that's right.
You only make a mistake once, right?
So look, we're exploring that definitely a lot more. And if there's any other opportunities from interested prospective clients out there, we'd love to hear from them.
So in terms of what your focus is, you're looking at purely the assets, because typically one of the things when we're talking about works and inspections is not just the towers, but vegetation and just things around the tower as well. So is that part of what you're looking at as well? How far do you go?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, look, at this stage, all our interest has been on the actual structure and the elements bolted to the structure. That's where the main interest has been. Clearly, with our data capture, we capture far more than that. We capture the whole scene, including the vegetation and everything else. So it's sitting there. We know we've got enough data to do the analysis of it, but it hasn't been a big driver yet. And as that comes, we'll be able to find a solution for that. Yeah, but definitely the data capture is already there, which is, in our game, is always a difficult thing.
Yeah.
We don't want to go back out and refly stuff, so we capture it once, and we process it many different ways. Yeah.
So there has been interest, I guess, within the in the telco space, particularly around your access tracks. So knowing the condition of what's coming in there, and knowing the placement of the hut, and being able to, without visiting the site, perform online measurements, so you know cable run feeds, or what you need to repair a fence and how much fencing. You need to do online measurements of the structure. So yeah, there is interest about that, but we operate on a more of a, what would you say, like micro level,
millimeter level,
focusing on the structures, whereas some of the other services or competitors out there, they're focusing on fixed wing, long kilometre distances, utilising LiDAR to capture large data sets. Whereas we're more about, let's focus in on that exact structure.
So you raise a good, interesting point that you're collecting a lot of data, right? So in terms of your analysis and what do you do with that? So modelling the as is, right? So back in the planning stage, then they've got CAD drawings and all those kind of concepts, and then they move into more of an operate versus as built, or as actually operate in the real world. So how much of that is actually, is there an interest in taking that back into the planning stage?
Yes.
Well,
the design phase,
Yeah, so we've just did a trial with a provider, And that was their major focus, right? We got this great detail of the structure, and we found out some of the misalignment of some of the equipment compared to what it was recorded. But their major focus was they want to put new equipment on other places, and simple things like they need to know the diameter of the pole to put bolts. What sort of bolt fitting do they need? Because that will determine whether they have to upgrade it or can they fit existing things on it. So that saved them, that was a really simple problem that we thought was already solvable. But no, apparently until they had our solution, they physically had to drive out the site, climb up, measure something, and
Power
come back down.
So,
It's crazy,
so there's
right?
that design phase of things before an installation where they
Yes.
can benefit from doing that. And then there's if they've done the installation, let's do an as-built now of that,
Yes.
what has actually happened. Because currently within the industry, you've got contractors who are engaged to do the installations, and then they're doing the as-built of their own work. It's
Yes.
like, well, yeah, I've done it right.
Yeah.
So we can quickly and independently do that, and that's beneficial not just to the tower owner, but also to the other tenants who might be multiple tenants on that structure.
So that's, yeah, exactly. So the tower itself is actually an asset, but then you've got the multiple carriers that could be utilizing that. The other bit that I'll also see is probably more from coming from an electronics engineering background, there is a device management supply chain of sorts. So all the different components that need to come up with that full asset needs to all work together. Probably more so in the energy space where you do need to be, and you've got software involved, like the tower's got software, making sure all those bits all work together. So it's interesting thing from an asset management perspective, what you guys are doing. It's interesting that you're looking into the full life cycle as far as what those assets are in terms of planning and all the way through. So very interested to see where you guys go, and definitely we'll catch up later after this in terms of the tech box and some of those other discussions. So thanks for having you along.
Cheers,
Lachlan.
Jason. That's great.
Thanks,
Lucio.
Jason.
Cheers, mate. Thanks, bye.
Up and